Yeah. Uri, Kaksar, Dras, Kargil, then Batalik, and when it reaches here at point NJ 9842, from where it goes north, which is the Siachen Glacier, right? So if you see the road from Jammu to Leh, this road from Udhampur to Srinagar, and then it passes very close to the line of control, very close to the line of control at Dras, Kargil. So this is the area of operations that was there at that time. What had happened was that the Pakistanis came in beyond this line of control, took over heights of Dras and Kargil, and thereafter they waited for us for our reactions. 1 second. So I have to. So this is what was. I have just made this, a little slide for you all to understand. So there were about 200 to 250 people at Moscow, 400 waiting to cross over. Then at Dras, there were 60 to 80 people. At Batalik, 200 to 250 people. And as early as May 6th of 1999, the army patrol had noticed 9 to 10 infiltrators in Batalik area over here. Okay. The Pakistani artillery started firing on us from May 7th onwards, and the first clash happened between the troops on May 8th. Then, of course, the heavy shelling started. Our Kargil, we had an ammunition dump that was blown up on May 9th. Okay, so this was a very heavy loss for the Indians. And then this is the time was the wake up call for us to kind of move in the troops at a faster rate. So 10 to 14 infiltrators again noticed in Dras, Kaskar, north of Moscow Valley. So all this was happening. And on May 14th, the flushing out operations had begun. Okay. So this is what, from the Kargil helipad, this is what the heights look at. The Pakistanis are right here along this hump, Three Pimples, Knoll, Tololing. They are along here. This is Indian territory. And the Dras helipad where we used to land is over here. Okay. So they were in direct, they could see us from where they were. They could direct their artillery fire. They could ensure that our transport operations, that is ground transport operations to feed our troops in Siachen Glacier, could be affected by their firing. So in effect, what they were trying to do was they were trying to kind of throttle the Siachen Glacier by not allowing our the AC transport to take the stuff to the Siachen Glacier. And of course, they were bombing and they were using the artillery fire to harass us over here. So a quick, before we start this actual thing, a quick recap of this whole thing. Intrusion noticed on 3rd May, 15th May when patrol was sent. Our 5 captured soldiers were captured and tortured to death. 9th May was the heavy shelling by Pakistanis. And the ammunition dump, as I told you, was blown off at Kargil. Then by between 10th and 26th, infiltrations were noticed all over. On 27th May, we lost 2 fighters, one due to engine failure and one which was shot down by the Pakistani missiles. On 28th May, we lost one Mi-17 which was shot down by the Pakistanis. And on 1st June, Pakistanis commenced their operations on the national highway, which goes from Jammu to Leh. Okay, so India on the 5th of June, then we released the proof of Pakistani army involvement. If you remember, they had brought back all those stuff from what they captured on the heights, the weapons as well as identity cards of the NLI soldiers and all that. And then, of course, by June, in between June and July, this is the time when the Indian troops went out to capture all the posts. The close air support was provided by the IAF. So this is in effect, in a nutshell, what happened in Kargil as far as the air war was concerned, ground and the air war was concerned. Okay, so 5th July, Pakistanis announced the withdrawal of their troops, and 26th July, Prime Minister Vajpayee announced the Kargil war as we have closed, right? So today, what I'm going to do is we are going to recount some of the memories of the Kargil war. We have with us Air Commodore Ashit Mehta, Good evening, sir, and welcome to this live show.
Thanks so much, Commodore Sake.
Just a brief introduction to Commodore Ashit Mehta. He joined the Indian Air Force in 1981. In the fighter stream, he has flown the MiG-21s and the 23s. He is a qualified flying instructor, as well as he has done the most prestigious experimental test pilots course at Epner in France. And he has served at the ASTE. And of course, being the flight commander at Jodhpur 10th Squadron, he's done the prestigious Staff College in England, King's College, and he's got the degree from the King's College. And in the middle of the Kargil war, when all the inductions were happening, that was the time there was a change of command of the MiG-23 squadron, which was positioned at Srinagar. So he took over the squadron as the fighting was on. So let us talk to him about what happened then and what were his first impressions after he landed up right in the middle of the fire. So, welcome on board.
Right. Thanks very much,
So your first impressions of reaching and taking over a unit right in the middle of operations.
Yes, I will recount that. But before that, I would like to welcome amongst our team of people who are actually online today, Marshal Nana Menon. Nana sir, a very good evening to you. It was under his command and aegis and his leadership that the entire Kargil war went through. He was AOC JNK, and would like to pay my compliments to him. Nana sir, I think your mic is muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashit.
Yes,
good evening to all of you. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Very well,
yes,
sir. Very well.
Good evening, sir. I didn't know that you were there.
No, I just happened to see the participants list, and it is an honor to have him amongst us, because he kind of led the entire operation from his side, leading from the front. Right, sir. With your permission, I would like to recount what we went through and how I was introduced right in the middle of the war. To be honest, I was earmarked to take over another squadron, and I'd gone through a revalidation, and I'd gone back to Kanpur. I was that time posted at Kanpur at one BRD to check out and test the AN-32 aircraft after major overhauls. That was my role at that time. So I remember in the middle of June, one evening, I got a call to report to Srinagar the next morning. With all the effort that we have in the summers, we managed to get some kind of a booking, reach Delhi, and then Halwara, and from there I was airlifted to Srinagar, managed a few hours of rest, and flew a dual check. And after the dual check, they had a call from the AOCNC that time, Marshal Patni, and he asked me, Ashit, are you ready? I said, yes, sir. He said, okay, send out a K broadcast. Today onwards, you are the CEO of the squad. And I think it is the best way to get a command of a squad in the middle of the war. It's a very honorable thing to happen. Right. So, leaving the past, we got our wits about, gathered our wits about, and looked at what was happening and how it was going about. Took the advice, and I had a briefing from Nana sir and everybody, who were actually coordinating the war at that point of time. And then, having had the full picture, we started our operations. I commanded 221 Squadron, the Valiants at that time. We had a small contingent of aircraft, but amazingly fit, capable, and amazing turnaround times of barely 30 minutes after every mission. It was remarkable for a fleet of that kind at that point of time. My initial impressions were that the entire scenario was something which none of us had ever experienced. 20 years back, 71 war happened, and there was, over a period of time, certain amount of slackness that is invariably possible in every structure, every organization. And we had perhaps some of the experienced aircrew and the people at that point of time were still available to us. And I remember very senior retired AOCs of Srinagar were also called upon to share their experience with us of operations in the valley at that point of time to help us prepare ourselves better. So all those things certainly helped. The team that I was leading was extremely motivated, and some of the young pilots were very capable who had already flown a number of missions. So the very next morning, I was put on a mission as number 3, and I remember we carried out an attack on Muntho Dalo. That was their Adam camp. We actually hit them pretty well. And on the previous day, there were some issues about the coordinates. So it had the impact of the stores that we dropped were a bit off the target. But the next day, when we got the correct impact inputs, we probably hit the Adam camp pretty well, and it was smoking by the time the Mirages went. So fog of war, as they say. Who hit them first is a different story. We didn't get the pictures, but it was a amazingly successful mission that was flown in between us and the Mirages. That aside, overall, I would say that the entire war was a massive lesson learned for all of us in terms of how quickly we adopted ourselves as a team in coordinated manner between the Army and the Air Force, and to be able to achieve success in a matter of barely 2 months on targets which were at a height of 15,000 feet and above had never happened in the past in any war in this world, anywhere in the world. Our leadership, our ability to adopt, acclimatize to the requirements of the operations, devise new concepts, and undertake campaigns under very challenging conditions created this huge possibility for us to win this operations within shortest possible time. In brief, that was what happened. But Nitin, we can perhaps come one by one to different phases of the operations instead of me talking continuously.
Yes, yes.
Would you like us to do some kind of a breakdown of the phases, or would you how should we progress?
So we can go like what you've just talked about, the jugaad that happened. So we can talk a little bit about first jugaad, because
Yes.
the ground crew and the AST had a major role to play as far as getting our smart, not so smart bombs to become a little more smarter with the
Yes.
GPS kits and all that. So maybe you can describe that part and how it was achieved. As also, your aircraft also had some problems of operating at high altitude, especially while firing of the rockets. So what was the problem and how did you kind of go around it?
So I should probably cover the aspects of how did we lose the 2 aircraft? Why did we lose them? The initial inputs that came to us were very sketchy in the sense the lat longs were not very accurate. It was very difficult to identify those targets from higher altitudes, pinpoint, because they are a small speck. The the campaign is called Safed Sagar because it is a huge, wide, snow-covered area of the war zone. So in that, to spot a small little target of a bunker was worse than finding a needle in the haystack. Today also in operation, just to put it in perspective, suppose today any pilot ejects in that area where it is peaceful operations, to find him and rescue him is a challenge by itself, even in a peacetime. So it is not an easy task to cover over a range of about 250 to 300 kilometers in that complete area of operations, and to be able to identify every point and speck of the target that was meant to be attacked. So what did happen is when we were still learning about the depth of their preparedness, we tried to undertake operations with the known campaigns or kind of concept that we knew. We knew dive attacks, we knew lay down attacks. And what does happen with operations above at those altitudes, that the medium is very rare, the air is very rare, the air pressure is very low. So the engine performance is not at its best. Engine performance, particularly the jet engine, operates the best at close to sea level. And as you keep going higher altitude, the air becomes lighter, and that is why its performance reduces. Now, what happens is during these operations, when we try to attack through using the conventional modes of weapons in terms of rockets, 57mm rockets. And when you fire salvo, a number of rocket pods at one time, the amount of disturbance it creates in front of the aircraft causes a huge break in the airflow into the engine. And that caused a surge on the MiG-27, which was being flown by Nachiket. That surge caused the engine to flame out. When he flamed out, the altitude at which he was firing and the elevation of the peaks below him was so low that he would have perhaps had just about one chance to relight. By then, he would have reached his minimum ejection altitude. So he had proposed to eject. When he ejected, he was landing almost close to the LOC or location of the enemy locations where they had entrenched and kind of taken on their positions. Ahuja, who was from the other squadron doing another mission, was made to orbit over the point where Nachiketa would have ejected to identify the location so that we can send our rescue teams. When Ahuja was trying to locate, he inadvertently came down in terms of loss of height because his aircraft was configured with certain amount of recce pods which were heavy, and obviously the maintenance of altitude above 15,000 feet and above is not very easy on a MiG-21 class of aircraft. While he came down, he was shot by a Stinger missile. Now this is something which to a large extent we were not very aware that they would be carrying shoulder-fired air to surface to air missiles, and in terms of their capabilities and how entrenched and how well prepared they were. So this was something which impacted us and kind of made us change our approach to the entire campaign and the war. And thereafter, we adopted ourselves. And I would say that some of those new tactics that we applied, everything I cannot disclose on this in this public medium, but what we adopted and how we changed our tactics changed the complete war scenario. And we made sure that thereafter we undertook attacks with a different technique, flying level at a higher altitude and releasing the weapons. And we changed the frequency of the missile attacks that we carried out. We changed our timings of operations. We coordinated our attack patterns and the slots for carrying out the airborne attacks along with the army to make sure that they did not conflict with their movement and climb to the peaks, so that ultimately it kind of added to the a cohesive manner of fighting a war in a correct coordinated manner, and that is what had a positive impact. I can tell you in very brief two lines which will convey a huge impact that we had. There was a message which was intercepted, a transmission which was intercepted from the troops who were deployed at those peaks back into the commanders in Pakistan, saying, "बादलों में से कयामत बरस रही है, हमारी हवाई फौजें कहाँ?" What was happening is the impact of our frequency at which we were dropping weapons had put in so much scare in those soldiers who were deployed on those peaks that it caused major havoc in them. And as you know, if you look at the air power doctrinal principles, it is not always the destruction that has a telling effect. Before that, there are 3-4 other steps. We call it deterrence, we call it delaying, we call it denying. And all these things have an impact on the final result that you want to achieve. Destruction is the last step, because destruction means the whole thing, everything has to be satisfied in terms of the targeting to be able to achieve that objective. So what we achieved by changing our tactics and changing our levels of attack, we may had a telling effect on those people. Thereafter, all along, thankfully to some of our friends of the international level, their integration of the laser guided bomb was in the process. It was still under evaluation phase on the Mirages, but thanks to the teams which are available who were integrating the systems on board, they managed to expedite the entire process, and with very minimal amount of evaluation in one of the peace locations, we carried out a laser guided bomb attack on Tiger Hill, which is very well recorded and kind of visible to the world to see the to see what impact it had. So I would say overall it was a collective effort from all of us, all the fleets involved, and the concepts and the kind of challenges that we faced, how we adopted ourselves, stained our tactics, and thereafter we were able to have a major impact on them. And I must say, very few wars in the history you will see come to a conclusive end like this with a very definite end state within a short period of time of 2 months. Nobody expected that we would be able to win this war in such a short time and in such a clear cut victory that was kind of depicted by achieved by us. Nitin? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, sir. So I have the details of your attack plan. You had 4 aircraft, Boxer 1 and 2, Haina 1 and 2, strike, and you had 51 squadron aircraft which were giving you the I think escort to the strike. And Ajay and Baldi had gone for the BDA, if I'm not wrong, sir. So was BDA kind of possible at those heights? One. Secondly, what was the threat from the other side? Did you get into any kind of a situation from where it could have developed into an air-to-air or something, some kind of this thing with the Mirages and the F-16 on the other side?
So we did after the first few missions on a number of occasions on our RWRs, we could see the F-16s over Skardu. But since they were perhaps we also noticing that we had the air defense escorts for every mission, they did not interfere with us. And I think one of the most mature decisions that came from the PM's office was not to escalate the war and go across. Just deal with the situation that was at hand. Because I think if you take an overall national perspective at that point of time, we were just getting into a positive economical growth path of growth past the 1992, 95, 90 phase. And I think anything beyond that, and had it escalated to a full-fledged war, economically, we would have again stepped backwards. And I think that was one of the wisest things to do, of not having gone across and kind of made it escalate all over. So, yes, we did spot them, but we didn't have to do anything because we had the air defense escort to take care of them. And we were, as a bomber force, Tiger bomber force, we were led to, because our entire process was about precision bombing. And without going into very technical details and explaining exactly what we did, our aim was to make sure that we hit the targets and a radius of 2 kilometers was kept clear of us. Because remember that all these targets were at an elevation and over a peak. Now, if you miss that by a few 100 meters also, the bombs will go into the valley either before or after. And if our troops were in that area, it would cause havoc and kind of have a lot of fratricide.
Yes.
So to make sure that everything was safe, this coordination required immense amount of communication between the army and our teams here. And for that, I would give credit to the coup and the director who was sitting at Srinagar, who made sure that this was ensured. Because for us, we were flying missions from 6 in the morning to 3 in the night.
Yes, sir. So in fact, talking of fratricide, sir, there were instances where some fratricide was reported of our own side as far as the troops was concerned, and also there was a chance of fratricide between aircraft to aircraft, not being able to identify a friend or foe at some point in time during the war. In my interviews with various people who participated in the war, I came to know of this particular issue. So could you just throw some light on the IFF as far as air to ground is concerned and air to air both is concerned, and how are you managing to keep clear of our own troops as well as our own aircraft?
Well, I think the major coordination was done on the ground well before the missions were launched, and we had a go no go kind of a direction which was available just at the point of takeoff to make sure that we were being, because our mission time, the time to targets were very short. If you were operating from Srinagar, to be able to reach those places, it's a matter of 15 to 18 minutes. And I remember the MiG-23BN at that altitude was so efficient because of it has a moving air intake. It had a flexible air intake that we actually were flying missions with partial fuel. We didn't even have to take full fuel. The MiG-27s had to take full fuel, and they always landed before us. We used to land much later. and we had to actually burn fuel and land because we had a limitation of overall landing weight.
Landing weight.
So for making sure that we did not interfere with our ground troops or fratricide, avoiding as much as possible. The major contribution was of the people on the ground who made sure that everything was coordinated and that area was kept clear in the radius of about 2 kilometers. So IFF mainly at that point of time for Mode 1, Mode 2 and Mode C were limited to some of the fleets of the aircraft, but we did not have much about air-to-air versions. That kind of, not at those times, not about 24 years back. The air-to-ground versions were very capable of being identified with the ground. Radars were able to identify the aircraft in the air, and they made sure that those kind of separations were maintained, safeties were maintained. But I think in any war, for that matter, you take historically any war, there will be certain amount of certain 10 to 12% of fratricide is very much part of every war. So that you have to accept that because it is practically impossible to coordinate every bit because the airspace is huge. You have so many missions being launched at the same time. And actually, I think compared to what is likely to happen today with the drones and the other unmanned platforms which are going to fly, what we went through was nothing.
Absolutely.
Today's difficulty of managing operations for a present day commander would be far huge and far difficult. Though
Yes.
there are systems that technology has improved to be able to do certain amount of AI, as they call it nowadays, intelligence will manage that. A simple word to say, but it's very complex in terms of undertaking those kind of things. So overall, I would say the safeties were there. Our air traffic control, radar controllers, fighter controllers were amazingly good at that time, and I remember having some of my own friends on the RT and recognizing each other, and that confidence that we had in each other was outstanding. So it was huge teamwork. Entire operations were a massive teamwork, and I think we came up together in every possible way. And I must not forget the kind of response that we received from the nation. It was one of the first so-called media war. Barkha Dutt was there, as you know. There was a huge story about what she did and how she participated, how she was present at the war zone. The famous movie which came out later on depicted a whole lot of that. And also, I remember receiving thousands of messages and emails from people all over the world and saying that we are with you and we are willing to do everything possible. There was so many aircraft, transport aircraft, which came with so many goodies for our troops, for our soldiers, for our jawans, for the airmen, and there was representation from the Bollywood side.
Yes.
I met a whole lot of senior kind of artists who came there, and we interacted with them, spoke to our teams to motivate them to boost the morale. It was fantastic, very impressive.
In fact, Ravina Tandon, I think, came and they wrote something on the bomb. It was fired on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that, sir. In
Yeah,
fact,
you had a picture.
Nana Menon was the AOC JNK that time, and maybe he can just give us in a few lines as to how was the Army and Air Force cooperation. We are all aware that it wasn't very good at the beginning of operations, and that is why there was a delay in getting the Air Force into its act. So how did it improve over time? If we can just throw, sir, can you give us a few points from your side about the Army Air cooperation?
I think Mr. JW Pathak has already told me I have to stand by to come on an
Okay, fine.
interview.
Fine. So we will leave it for
but I must say this. You're right that I would put it a little differently. At the lower levels, what Air Commodore Rashid Mehta is talking, at the lower levels, our cooperation, coordination was excellent.
Yes.
It is at the higher levels that there was whatever happened. And there is still a dispute over who did what and who did not do what. So we will leave it for another day to talk about it.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Right, sir. So we will leave it for another day. Let's hear it more from Air Commodore Mehta. Sir, would you like to recount two aspects of intelligence gathering? One is the role of the MiG-25 to be flown at low speeds and low levels only with Mirage escorts, as well as the Canberra sorties, one which got fired upon and we came back with one engine. The first time a Canberra landed in ops with one engine out with a missile hit. If you could recount those two incidents, sir.
Right. So those were the initial days when we just started to get to know about. We wanted to understand the overall capabilities that they had, and that was the first indication that they had the shoulder-fired missiles when the Canberra was hit and it recovered. Thereafter, we changed the way we gathered our intelligence. You'll be amazed to know that we used a trainer aircraft with somebody sitting in the rear with a video camera, and even when captured some of those videos and the locations and the established established bunkers that they had, to be able to see what is the dimension of the target, how it is how it is safeguarded, what are the camouflage processes that I've used. So we adopted again, but nevertheless, as Nana sir also said, our local and tactical level of operations that we were able to undertake at that point of time were adequately briefed. In the sense, initial days, of course, as you know, before the middle of June, things were not very clear. But middle of June to end of July, when we actually succeeded in clearing everything, by that time we had adequate information. And as once we started hitting them, and our army was starting to get access, we were able to get even more clarity on the exact locations of the target. So things did take a little while. We did suffer initial tragedies, but then I think it was okay. The
Right.
intelligence, you can't help it, Nitin. You will understand
Absolutely,
that
absolutely. No,
20 years of gap, this kind of a terrain which was always at peace, and we
True.
were focusing on Siachen. How much more can a nation do in terms of supporting our troops and deploying all over? There's a massive 300 kilometers range is not easy to maintain,
Absolutely.
and I wouldn't blame anybody for it. It is something
No,
which anybody will face.
the intent was not to blame, sir. The intent was to just to get people up to speed about what actually was happening there, sir. And
Yes, yes, I
sir,
appreciate.
basically, if you allow me, I'll just add a little story about the Mirage 2000 directing the artillery fire. The Mirage used to fly at night, midnight, 2 o'clock at night, fly at about 40,000 feet, and the artillery shell would go, a tracer would be fired, which used to fly at about 70 odd thousand feet. So it could be traced across the skies, falling into the enemy side, and then they used to use their equipment on board to find the fall of shot and give the information back to the artillery to correct their artillery guns. If I'm not, that's what I was told by one of the Mirage pilots, that this is what is happening. So this was the kind of interaction that started happening between the Army and the Air Force as the war progressed. Right, sir. So any other special anecdotes on ground that you would like to come out with? How was the interaction with the families? What was happening with the airmen? How was the Josh of the airmen? It was
I think
fantastic, I'm told.
you bring a very good point. I think that is something which we must talk about. Nothing is one by one an individual. It's a team effort. I would say the support that we received from the station, the administration, our families way back to at our bases. My squadron was actually originally from Alwara, and actually I had taken over the squad during the war. So my wife she reached Alwara, and thereafter she had to gather the entire squadron and the ladies who were very concerned about their husbands. Communication those days, mobile sets and all were not very common, and it was not allowed to use because obviously these things get filtered, and you may be conveying something which you should not. So for many reasons, so the network that was available was limited. People had to reach out and ensure that we were all safe. So we did this on a periodical basis. Every pilot, every engineer, every technical officer, every a technician in the squadron was made to speak to their families at a regular interval to make sure that the morals were maintained and the families were not, so worried. Particularly so after we had lost a few fighters and the helicopters. So things did heat up a lot. As I said, the support that we received from the general public in terms of their willingness to support the operations, provide any kind of help that they want. I remember one gentleman having written a mail to me. He had moved to US. He was a software engineer, and he said it was my dream to become a fighter pilot, but I could not clear the SSB, or I missed. I did not come the merit list. I've landed up here, but I would like to contribute $1,000 for every bomb that you drop. So this is a way of a kind of patriotism that people described and depicted, and kind of shared their happiness in being able to contribute in some way or the other. It was outstanding in many ways. My men, you will be surprised, they were so motivated in the squadron that before we went for a mission, we would not share exactly where we were going, but we would tell them so that they feel as a part of the entire operation. They should not feel that they are only there to turn on the aircraft and load the bombs and make sure it is serviceable. Not only that, I would tell them that you are part of my mission. You are with me in a way, because this is what we are going to do. This is what we are, where we are, and this is the area that we are going to fly on, and this is how we are going to deal with the weapons. Not telling them exactly what lat long or anything, because obviously those were very secret. But their involvement for everything that we did, when we came back and landed, they would ask us how it went, so what happened. And amazingly, an aeroplane like a MiG-23BN, which is a very huge 3-ton carrying bomber, would be turned around in 30 minutes. By the time you walk to the squadron debrief and you finish your cup of tea and come back, he said, "Sir, aircraft is ready." We were so, with just 6 aircraft available in the squadron, we had 100% serviceability for all the number of days available. Obviously, there was a backhand support from the station if anything went down or any spare was required. But our aircraft was capable of handling 6 to 8 missions a day, and if we were to go to a full war, my own squadron's requirement would land up to probably 200 tons a day in terms of number of bombs that would be required, because I can take 3 tons every mission, and six aircraft for three or 6 to 8 missions we could have flown in 24-hour cycle. All I'm saying is the capabilities were huge, and everything was being made to be operational to its full potential, and the teamwork and support were outstanding. Nitin? Pathakji, you've taken over.
Sir, I think we have come down to 19-20 hours now, and we've got about 10-15 minutes for Q&A.
Okay, sure.
Nitin, can I
continue to
intervene?
talk over and over.
Yeah. Emma should also say something. Nitin, Emma should also say something.
Sure,
Please
sure.
go ahead, sir.
Nitin talked about this. Mirage is trying to direct the artillery fire. This thing is known as bracketing. Bracketing means that you allow them to fire, tell them they are, say, 2 kilometers undershoot. Then they will fire one more round. And we used to do it in the Sukhoi 7 in long time back.
Okay.
And try to get the artillery to finally come onto the thing. And please, one more point, more fact that I want to say is the Bofors guns were used as direct weapons during this war.
Yes.
The army used it as a direct weapon, and that caused a lot of problems for the Pakistanis. Thank you. I will leave you now. Thank you very much, Ashit. That was good to hear you talk. And thank you, Nitin. And thank you, Mr. Mehta. Thank you, Mr. Pathak. And let me know when I have to come on this, and we will talk more about the same time. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Well
sir.
done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
so
sir.
much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
So anybody who wants to ask any question can unmute and ask the question, and Commodore Ashit Mehta will reply. Or if there are a couple of more questions, then I can combine them together and ask it to him in case there are any. Somebody's joined now. Anybody for any questions?
Actually, one question, sir. Pathak
Yeah.
here. Actually, flying at near LOC was very risky because fighter aircrafts have more speed, and if they take turn, the radius is so big that they are likely to cross the LOC also. So, what was his experience during that time? Has he
Right,
any
so-
time crossed LOC? Sir, have you any time crossed LOC? Or
Yes, Pathak. We certainly crossed LOC a number of times, but it was in the process of carrying out a mission. Because as you can appreciate at those altitudes, you can't make out where is the LOC, where is the border, where is Pakistan, where is India.
Yeah.
You are carrying out a certain mission. You're focusing on precise deliveries, and during those missions, there were times when we went across maybe 7, 8, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers. We don't know. We turn in the radius of turn, rightly so. But what happened is in that process, because there was no air operations or launch of any fighter platforms on their side. We were not under threat. And we were always escorted by our air defense escorts. So we had no worries about that. And inadvertently, we would have crossed. No doubt about that.
And two-tone squadron, roughly how many operation sorties they have performed?
Right. So that's a good
Squadron as a
question.
whole. Squadron as a whole.
So a squadron as a whole delivered 28, nearly 30% of the total operational missions.
Oh, great.
My team was, the squadron was given battle honors, appreciated by that, and we received 6 gallantry awards from the squadron, including myself.
I'm proud of that. I'm also ex-221.
Thank
Now
you.
back
Thank
in 68.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you, thank you. Each one of
Thank you,
us is
sir.
proud of that achievement, the national level. Yes.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I am JW Ramesh. I was in 221 squadron from 81 to 85.
Very nice of you, Mr. Ravi. So nice to speak to you.
So, thank you, sir. It's a really pride moment that one Valiant is talking about the experience of the Kargil, and we are really proud of you, sir. What you have done, and really, we are all proud of you, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it is not just me alone. I would have not been able to achieve anything without my team, my people, and the support behind, and the families who supported each one of us. Grateful
But
to all of them.
Sir, it's normally believed, and we are given to understand that Air Force came later for this war. Can you say
Okay.
something about that?
Right. Good question. So that is a misconception. I think what initially did transpire is that when the initial threat was appreciated, as Commodore Sathe brought out, the helicopter sortie had relayed that there has been some abnormal activities, some observations, but they were not being paid any heed to. And the army commander at that point of time in that area, the commodore or the brigadier who felt that perhaps it was a very small number of troops who were deployed and they would probably be able to counter them within the brigade level of operations. And that is the reason it was a bit delayed. Nobody was aware of the depth to which they were prepared. And everyone knows that the elevations of the peaks, as when you take it from the POK side, the gradient is very shallow. For them to access the peak was much easier compared to what we had. For us, it was very steep. And we were exposed to them directly. So there was a degree of difficulty which was huge. And they had taken 3 to 4 years to reach that stage of maturity in terms of deployment. So much so, I can't be very sure, but so much so that some of the rations were even procured from our side and they had taken them from our side and taken it and put them in their bunkers. So those are the things which are which kind of say that the preparation from their side was very deep, very well thought out, and very secretive, very well managed. Because at that area was not very commonly kind of targeted, we had taken it easy. Our army side was thinking that they would be able to tackle them themselves. So by the time the impact of their strength or their locations were understood, it was rather late. We had lost quite a few people, and then the Air Force was called in. Now, whenever you induct a new set of people and into a new area of operations, the Air Force also took a little while to establish itself, understand the degree of difficulties, see the challenges of that area. Nobody had fought war at those levels. Nowhere in the world you had a experience to be able to follow, no precedents. So things did take a little while, but nevertheless, as I said earlier, within 2 months to bring out a conclusive win in a war like this, it was an outstanding performance. Never in the history.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I also appeared for 127 flying pilot course, from which same course you are, sir. But I could not make it in the merit.
Nice to know. Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank
all
you,
of us played a role in our own lives. Thank you very much, Parag.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. You permit me, sir? I am Jayavali Amin from Kanyakumari.
Yes. Good evening to you.
You have got two systems. That is why this echo is coming. You can shut off one system.
That's because the camera is not working in this laptop.
You can shut off one system, then you can speak, then we can hear you.
Good, fine.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Mr. Murun. No, you're muted now. You're muted. Unmute.
Actually, sir, the incursion started on May 3rd, but it was observed only after a month. So why such delay?
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Nirmalji, you can appreciate that the terrain that we're talking about, जो mountainous terrain है, which peaks of going up to 25, 30,000 feet, basic elevation of 15,000 feet, उसमें to be able to spot anything is extremely difficult. Initially, every year, what used to happen is over the last 20 years, summer mein, when the snow was melting, army used to move forward and check out all the peaks and send a scout, a team of 5 to 7 jawans with one captain or a lieutenant to go around in that area and check whether everything is okay. When the team did not come back, and they realized that they were tortured and killed very badly, and they were very badly tortured. Some of those things are undescribable actually. That is the time we realized that there is something unusual happening. Plus, some of the shepherds in that area had started telling our Jawans that they are seeing some new faces, and they feel that those people don't belong to this area, and those kind of inputs took a little while to reach our operational areas and the people and the commanders to be able to appreciate exactly what is the depth of their preparedness. So it took a little while. As you can appreciate, 20 साल कुछ नहीं हुआ था. So उसके बाद to be able to reach a certain level of preparedness takes a little while. It is practically anybody would have to face the same thing. Today we are far more better informed. Thanks to the operations of Kargil, today we have started getting into something called theater commands. Some of the lessons learned from that, we have now have a CDS, which was the finding of the committee which we recommended that formation. Today the intelligence gathering is done through drones.